Hello and welcome to the Lightbearer's Library. Today's journal entry is all about the ISFP versus the INFP and my own journey from going from an ISFP to an INFP best fit MBTI personality type. So when I first did the tests, I got pretty much across the board ISFP. I think one of the tests suggested that I could have ISFP, ESFP, or INFP. And at the time, when I had started digging into the personality stuff, I thought I was an ISFP. I was like, yeah, that sounds good. I'm artistic. I like singing, and I am, I like being engaged in nature, and it felt pretty good. I went along for many, many, many months. The reason why I didn't look into INFP as my own type is because I had immediately seen that my sister was an INFP, my younger sister of 7 years. I was like, oh, wow, she's an INFP. That explains so much about her. So I think subconsciously I didn't look into INFP for myself because, well, that was her type. And growing up, I spent a lot of time. Well, I always thought she was copying me, right? It was just like, get your own life, get your own music, like your own kind of music, like your own things, stop copying me. Now that I've come to see myself as an INFP as well, I realized that we were both loving and expressing the part of our soul that was INFP together. And so I feel bad for my little sister kind of having a big sister kind of pushing her away at that point. So I think subconsciously I had not considered that as my type because it was clearly my sister's type. So how I got to INFP as my own type was I was reading Susan Storm at Psychology Junkie. She had posted about the best Jung quotes for each of the types. And this quote stopped me in my tracks. I was like, that nails it on the head. It said, loneliness does not come from having people about one, but from being unable to communicate the things that seem important to oneself, or from holding certain views which others find inadmissible. I feel like that explained so many of my relationships, so much of my life. It just felt like I couldn't quite express what was happening inside of me. So, and then the ISFP one didn't really ring true, and I was like, okay, well, maybe I need to look into this INFP thing. And I started reading Susan Storm's INFP articles, and it was like she was a little fly on the inside of my soul and could see inside of my mind and my heart and everything. And I started bawling and felt like, this is me. This fits more completely. And when I realized that, I started looking back at my thoughts about being an ISFP. And as I explained in a previous video, it just didn't fit. There were lots of things that made me feel like I don't know, but it's pretty good. So, so when I started looking into the functions, ISFP and INFP both share introverted feeling, which is the first cognitive function of each of those types. So it makes sense. Like they're both looking at the world subjectively and figuring out what they feel is important to them. And so that was a commonality between those two types for me. And so that was great. And because they're connected, so if you have FI, you automatically have TE as one of your top 4 functions. So, or extroverted thinking. So those two were locked in. I knew I had extroverted thinking, because my mom is an extroverted thinker, and I know that that's how I work. I like things organized, and there's, a proper way of doing things. And, like, I knew that those two functions I had. That was it. Um, and so the other two functions, the ISFP has um, extroverted sensing and introverted intuition. The INFP, on the other hand, has um, introverted sensing and extroverted intuition. So looking at those, I started realizing and reflecting on those functions and realizing that actually what I thought was extroverted sensing, being good at doing tactile things. Like ISFPs are known for being crafty and artsy and having great aesthetic and I thought that was maybe me, but then realizing that introverted sensing is there's an inward subjective. So when you see things in the external world, when you sense them, right? When you sense extroverted things or things in your environment, what it immediately does for an introverted sensor is it stimulates this the internal subjective world of thoughts and feelings from the past, or thinking how it could, maybe play out in the future. Like it's an internal thing. And I realized that's exactly what I do is, if I see a man outside walking his dog, it will maybe be like, oh, that guy looks like this person, and then I'll be off on a whole a whole memory of things. Or if I smell something in the air, like today with the fall leaves, it brings me back to my childhood, on particular days. Or the sunlight, if it's slanting in a certain way, it'll remind me of a time. So I was like, oh, well, of course I have introverted sensing as opposed to extroverted sensing. So that was kind of, upon reflection, that's me. The other thing was, I kind of didn't see myself as an intuitive. But when I started contemplating having extroverted intuition, I realize that's exactly. I'm constantly thinking of new ideas and what could we do, or what could I do? It's constantly, like my whole life, little business ideas. Maybe I could have a soup business or a tea business, or I could be a massage therapist, or just constantly constantly changing my mind on things, and dreaming up all sorts of possibilities in my head, and just loving that. So yeah, I think upon reflecting on the cognitive functions that the INFP has, I was like, well, that's a no-brainer. And when there's a thing called I can't remember, looping, right? I can't remember what the first term is, but it's like when we get into a space where we're maybe feeling a bit like, ooh, I need to retreat from the world, or a bit stressed, we might go into what's called a loop. And so with the INFP, the loop is FINI, or FISI. So introverted feeling, introverted sensing. And that looks a lot like watching Harry Potter over and over again, which is so what I do. Or needing comforts, needing to just be in routine and needing to reread books. I don't want to read new books because, there's too much unknown in new books, right? Exciting things happen or bad things happen, and it's too much. I just want to reread old, cozy, comforting books. So that was another thing where I was like, oh, that's an INFP thing. Of course it is. So yeah, I if you're contemplating ISFP versus INFP, those are some of the things I would look at. Would definitely be the extroverted intuition and the introverted sensing versus being a extroverted sensor and a introverted intuitor. And the other reason why I knew that wasn't quite right is because my husband is an INFJ. So an INFJ and an ISFP share the same no, they don't share all the same functions. Oh, I'm having a complete blank. But they do share introverted intuition and extroverted sensing. Yeah, that's what they share: introverted intuiting and extroverted sensing. And I was trying to figure out how I had some of what he had, and I was like, I don't feel like I do what he does. And I don't, because we don't share any of the same top 4 functions as an INFJ and an INFP. So that was helpful. And so perhaps another way of looking, triangulating that in your own life is if you know someone else in your life that is a certain type, and perhaps you're wanting to look at if they share a couple functions or maybe they're different functions, like just really contemplate whether you look at the world the way they do or do some of the same things that they do. Kind of try and see that. So that has been my experience. It's been about a month of like feeling and knowing that INFP is my best fit type. And it's life-changing. I feel so free. I'm like, oh, that makes total sense. And I can't wait to live the rest of my life as an INFP. And to help myself be grow more by knowing how to develop those functions. So yeah, I think that's pretty much it. Let me know in the comments if you are contemplating this ISFP versus INFP, and let me know if this has helped to stimulate any thoughts or feelings about things. And yeah, I can't wait to keep talking more about INFP thoughts and things. So I'll leave it there for today. Signing off. XOXO, Kate.